So this year CoinDesk turns 10, and I think you have been around in crypto longer than CoinDesk has.
I actually have a funny story about that. So I built an app called ZeroBlock back in 2013, and ZeroBlock at the time was the most popular mobile app in crypto. It was like a Blockfolio meets CoinDesk in a way. So what we did is we had a news feed, charts, real-time pricing data. We eventually sold that to blockchain.com in December 2013. And so one of the features was our news feed, and I manually curated the news feed. So this was before CoinDesk, Cointelegraph, News BTC. There wasn't anything back in the day. So yeah, I mean, I remember we used to scrape the our Bitcoin subreddit, because that's where news broke. So not Twitter. No, Twitter wasn't a thing back then. It was actually Bitcoin Talk forums and our Bitcoin. Yeah, Twitter became a recent phenomenon in like 16 through like 18 era.
So it has been, I think, exactly a decade since you were scraping the Bitcoin forums. Yeah. Did you expect to be where we are at now?
I mean, I think to me right now represents Bitcoin's like an incredible accomplishment for Bitcoin. I think, there's an old post on our Bitcoin called 10,000's My Moon, where the original Andrew Botter, the original guy who ran the Bitcoin meetup in San Francisco, that's where I was for almost a decade. And so the meetup back then was there was like 10 of us in January 2013. It's like Brian and Fred from Coinbase, Charlie Lee, Jed McCaleb from Ripple Stellar, and a bunch of, Jesse Powell. I feel kind of poor compared to all those guys. I think I'll do quite well. I mean, I did well too, but seeing how far it's come from there. I mean, we were a couple guys. I don't think there was any girls in the space back then. A couple guys in a garage, basically drinking PBRs. To see it come from that, like super amateur, really like kind of grassroots sort of level to now, where this event space is massive. I think that represents like a huge accomplishment for Bitcoin and crypto overall. So yeah, I couldn't be happier with where we are now. I mean, Bitcoin didn't die and it thrived, so I think that's a success.
Are you a Bitcoin maxi? And can I ask you about other use cases?
Sure. I would call myself a Bitcoin moderate. I love Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin's the most important reason why we're here. There are other interesting things. I think stable coins, NFTs are clear examples of other things being used. Personally, I've gotten more involved in NFT projects. Like the ordinals, like Taproot Wizards. I'm helping out on that a little bit, so yeah.
Do you think, because I feel like with accepting a new technology, there's got to be real use cases. Do you think crypto has reached that? Well,
I've actually got a blog post coming out about this that I've been working on for a few months called Casino Games, where how do you introduce, so Bitcoin is a new money, how do you introduce people to a new money? The idea of money is a very complex thing. Most people don't wake up and go, I decided to question the nature of my reality today. I wonder why I should use the dollar, the pound, or the euro. So how do you introduce someone to this new money? Bitcoin had a speculative mechanic, through 13, 17, and 2021, because it has a fixed quantity. When demand increases, the price goes higher. People hear about it because the price is higher, and that leads to a virtuous flywheel effect. So most people were introduced to Bitcoin through speculation. That's not a bad thing. Speculation isn't a dirty word. All assets have speculation, and Bitcoin is kind of pre-programmed to have, I'd say, more volatile, highly speculative, and high awareness sort of moments about the currency. That leads to people longer term coming for the speculation but staying for the sound money. Because then they learn about it, they hear from me and others, and they're like, okay, I get why I was gambling with it before, but now I understand why I should be into it. So I think when we look at the core use case of crypto, a lot of things are optimized to be more speculative. Yield farming, NFTs, all of these things represent different games to play, different speculative games. Now, I do think that value mostly accrues back to a money. So I think these speculative games are user acquisition methods. And some of them are, I think, very, very, at a primitive level, very useful, like lending and borrowing. That's like a very primitive market activity. But most lending and borrowing isn't over-collateralized in the world. It's under-collateralized. So, TBD on how big the TAM is of that, right? And people borrowing because they have over-collateralized positions. Most people borrow because they need the money. They don't have the money. So, TBD on like how many real-world use cases it's solving, but it is solving the problem of money. And I think we're seeing a lot of really cool other speculative use cases being built on top of that lean in or complement that money use case.
Last question. Can I ask you to kind of map out the next 10 years? CoinDesk got 20.
I think I would have been pretty off if I had mapped this out 10 years ago. So What I do know is I think Bitcoin will still be the #1 currency in the space. I think from network effect, interest, governance, monetary policy, liquidity, it stood the test of time. And so I think Bitcoin will still be #1. I do think we'll see a lot of DeFi activity come to Bitcoin. We're starting to see that with ordinals. And actually it's I would call it a superior NFT platform because the graphic assets on-chain, and with the UTXO model, it can't be changed after you distribute them. So it's not like you could update the smart contract and change things. So I think that that is the first step towards Bitcoin DeFi becoming a bigger narrative. I'd say we'll see a lot of DeFi activity come back to Bitcoin. So that would be my prediction in the next 10 years. Also, probably Bitcoin at like $500,000 a Bitcoin would only half a million to $1 million seems like a nice range. But yeah, we'll see what the future holds.
Thank you so much for chatting with me.